The number of Jewish settlers in the West Bank has more than doubled since the start of the peace process 16 years ago. Israeli policy is driven by the uncomfortable need to ensure the security and prosperity of these settlements. But should Democrats be supporting these people? I went to take a closer look. I headed just a couple of miles east from Mahmoud's village of Al-Masra to the settlement of Tekoa, switching to an Israeli guide and driver in order to cross the lines. Just coming into the rather agreeable settlement of Tekoa, which looks a bit like Guildford. Tekoa is part of a strategically vital block of settlements which lies to the south of Jerusalem.
Hello, good morning everybody.
Good to see you.
Hope you had a good journey.
Lovely journey, thanks.
I'd come to meet Shani Simkovitz, who has lived here for the past 27 years.
My grandmother was born in the old city of Jerusalem.
Is that your grandmother?
Yes, my grandmother is sitting down here.
When was this taken?
This picture was taken in about 1912. Her name is Malka, and this is my daughter Malka, named after her. Now,
Shani's family left Israel during the First World War, and Shani was born in Brooklyn, but she returned to Israel when she was 16.
They had a rebellious granddaughter who, at the age of 16, realized that a Jew's place is in the land of Israel.
So the history of your family's been one on all sides of wandering from country to country.
Like all Jews.
Like all Jews.
Like all Jews, but this time we're not wandering. We're here to stay.
Did you feel uncomfortable coming to a place which the rest of the world considers to be an illegal occupation?
I don't like using those kind of words. I would call it disputed. There's nothing occupied. There was no one here to occupy it from.
Well, you may call it disputed, but the rest of the world calls it occupied.
No, but if you read your history books and you see semantics are a very important game here, okay? That's not the reason there isn't peace in the Middle East is because there are 250,000 Jews living on hilltops in Judea and Samaria. That has to do with a major force that doesn't want democracy in the Middle East. It has to do with the culture. If you're a democratic, honorable society that really wants for the rights of your people, okay, you're going to say I'm a racist. What has Islam given to the world beside oil?
Do you understand, both of you, did you understand why they're angry?
No, I don't know.
You don't understand why?
I have all kinds of things that I think, maybe because of religion issues, maybe because social issues. There are all kinds of issues. I don't know. I never talked to them that I could know.
Shani took me on a tour of the settlement block. It felt like a prosperous American suburb, which, in a way, is what it was. The settlers have lives very different from those of their Palestinian neighbours. There are no water shortages. They tend to pass through the checkpoints with a cheerful wave. In many areas, there are even separate roads for Jews and Arabs. Our first stop was to meet the local mayor, Shaul Goldstein. Shani was keen that I talk to him about the local political situation.
How do you get on with the Arab villages in the area? How does this...
This is a long story, but I have to tell you, I will try to make it briefly. The major portion of the Arab society, they don't want any relations with the West. For them, the great Satan, the great devil, is you, not me. It's the West, it's United States mainly, and second, Britain. And they don't like Israel here because Israel is like an outpost of the West inside the region of the Islam.
Do you understand why the Palestinians feel angry at your presence here?
History proved that this is the only place of the Jewish people. The Islamic world has 500 times the size of Israel. They own 22 countries. We have a single state. We're smaller than New Jersey. The width of Israel is the length of a JFK airport in New York. This is what we have. Sorry, we're not going to the sea again. We're not going to the Holocaust again. You can say whatever you want. I lost all my family in the Holocaust. I don't have grandmothers, grandfathers, uncles. I don't have nothing. The world can say whatever they want. This is our land, and we're going to stay here.
It was a powerful defence, and the Jews of Tekoa have certainly made huge sacrifices in their determination to stay here. Later, I met some of Shani's neighbours, including Seth and Sherry Mandel. whose son, Kobe, was murdered by Palestinians.
Kobe was 13. This was 6 years ago. He's our oldest son, and he decided not to go to school. And he and his friend Joseph Ishran, they decided to go hiking nearby here. And of course they didn't tell us, and they left in the morning, and they never came home. And they were beaten to death.
They were beaten to death by who?
By Palestinians who took rocks and beat them to death.
I wonder about the Palestinians. There will be parents who have lost kids, possibly at the hands of Israeli soldiers. What do you say to them?
Well, I think that there's a fundamental and qualitative difference between cold-blooded murder and murder in the defense of your country. I don't believe that there would be a conflict here if the Palestinians' leadership wanted peace, if they developed a culture not of hatred but of respect and honor for the Jewish presence here.
More than 1,000 Israelis have been killed since the start of the Second Intifada 7 years ago. In the same period, around 4,000 Palestinians have died. A combination of fear, mistrust and loathing, not to mention the huge security apparatus, means settlers and Palestinians are now almost entirely segregated. The Jews, in particular, prefer it that way.
At their most generous, the settlers will extend to the Palestinians the benefit of being a secondary labour force characterised by low skills, low aspirations and very, very cheap indeed. And they will put up with them so long as there are no territorial ambitions and certainly no nationalistic ambitions. It's undoubtedly true that it's very, very difficult not to admire the settlers. They're very brave, very resilient, and they have made an awful lot of this land. And they point out with some justice that the Palestinians have made rather less of it, and they doubt that the Palestinians ever will make anything of it. And it is in that attitude that you begin to see the relationship between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
It is hard to equate the social and economic imbalance between the two communities with our notion of democracy. And this inbuilt inequality is even more stark when Jews and Palestinians live right next door to each other.
Go on! She started up with me! I'm gonna kill her! She's not supposed to be here! It's a Jewish place! It's a Jewish place!
I was headed for the city of Hebron, which lies at the southern end of the West Bank. It is the site of the tomb of Abraham, and it is sacred to both Muslims and Jews. Hebron is the only place in the West Bank where a community of Jewish settlers lives right in the heart of a Palestinian city. Many are what we might call religious fundamentalists. They arrived in the immediate aftermath of the Six-Day War and have steadily expanded since then, acquiring property through a mixture of purchase and seizure. I wanted to see how the Israeli state mediates in this petty and occasionally vicious confrontation, whether its response is what we'd expect of a democratic state. I'd come to meet Hani Abu Haikal.
Hi. How are you? Rod.
I am Hani Abu Haikal.
Hani, nice to meet you.
Me too.
Hani is university educated but sells coffee for a living because of the chronic levels of unemployment in the West Bank.
What a market. What a market.
Yeah, you know, this market, it was...
Beats Walthamstow, mate. It's terrific.
Yeah.
Hani is one of the last remaining Palestinians still living in the old centre of Hebron, which has now been set aside as the Jewish quarter. That was where we were headed, but before entering the Jewish part of town, we made a stop to pick up supplies.
So what is